Welcome to Beyond Limits, empowering coaches and entrepreneurs.
I'm Steve Remmert.
And I'm Odile Remmert.
Get ready for a podcast that challenges everything you thought you knew.
We're the founders of the Remmert Method, ready to shake up your mindset.
Break through doubts, fears, and limiting beliefs and ignite your true potential.
Join us for inspiring conversations and strategies you won't hear anywhere else.
This is Beyond Limits, empowering coaches and entrepreneurs.
Subscribe now and get ready to redefine what's possible. Welcome to Beyond Limits, empowering coaches and entrepreneurs.
I'm Steve Remmert.
And I'm Odile Remmert.
Get ready for a podcast that challenges everything you thought you knew.
We're the founders of the Remmert Method, ready to shake up your mindset.
Break through doubts, fears, and limiting beliefs and ignite your true potential.
Join us for inspiring conversations and strategies you won't hear anywhere else.
This is Beyond Limits, empowering coaches and entrepreneurs.
Subscribe now and get ready to redefine what's possible.
How do you handle negative thoughts? Do you ever have any negative thoughts? And, I know that there are a lot of other messages out there, a lot of other coaches, or a lot of other teachings regarding what to do, how to handle negative thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I know for myself, I lived a lifetime, dealing with that negative voice or those negative thoughts popping up. And I know that a go-to for me was more of a ignoring them or trying to repress them, trying to swallow that or whatever, just trying to not think about it. But sometimes the more you try not to think about it, the more you're having those negative thoughts. So your experience.
I've never had any.
Well, that's easy. It's easy to believe, actually.
No, I was riddled with them at one point. And the way I would deal with them depended on exactly how bad I was feeling at the time. Mm-hmm. So if I wasn't feeling too bad, the negative thought would come and I wasn't in too negative a state, I would do what you did, try and ignore it, try and repress it, push it down, that kind of thing. But what happened probably most of the time is that I ran away with them. So I would join in. So the negative thought would come and then I would add to it. For example, if I don't know what to do, that was one of my big ones that I used to say a lot to myself. I don't know what to do. And it was always a stressful state. So I don't know what to do. Yeah, because I've tried that and that's not going to work. And I've tried that before and that's not. And I would just, if I can't figure something out, then this terrible thing's going to happen. And so I would join in and add to it.
Yeah. And as we are joining in with those negative thoughts, obviously, what ends up happening is that the brain is starting to create those negative neurochemicals. And as that whole process is happening, we start to lose access function of the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is where we're doing our logical thinking. We're problem solving. We are being strategic with the prefrontal cortex of our brain. So if we are wandering further and further into the deep, dark woods of negative thoughts, we are impairing our ability to actually function well, make good choices and decisions. So I always knew I needed to do something with these negative thoughts. What do we do?
Yeah, yeah, good point. Yeah, and as you say, just that point about the prefrontal cortex is such an important one to bear in mind, because the challenge with it is, the biggest challenge is that, so you're feeling a negative emotion. As we know, those stress chemicals cause blood to drain from that part of the brain, so you can't think clearly. And the problem is that from that state, the illusion of those negative thoughts is very, very real. You can't see outside of it. So you mentioned deep, dark woods. And I think that's a great analogy where once you've gone off the road, it depends on how long you've been driving in that direction off the road as to how deep you get into the wilderness or the deep, dark woods. And the further into it you get, the less you can see anything else. And so then you wander around in those deep, dark woods and you can't see the road. From that point, You have to just grab that wheel and turn in the direction that you know the road is in, and just keep moving in that direction until you can see it again. But the challenge is it may be a while before you see it. And
Yeah.
that's what's so difficult. So we get into those states.
Mhm.
The other thing is that the brain is constantly trying to predict the future based on how you're feeling right now, based on the present. And you may have experienced this. I know I definitely did quite a lot. When you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed or despondent, and then someone says, oh, come out with us, you'll have a good time, it'll help. And from that depressed state, you cannot imagine that it would ever help. From that depressed state, you imagine going out, and your brain is predicting that when you get there, you're going to feel exactly the same as you feel now, because it's predicting it'll be the same. So the brain is constantly trying to predict the future, but based on the present, and it's not very good at it. That was the main thing I wanted to say. Can I tell a quick story?
A quick one.
Along these lines, at one point in my life, I was pretty depressed. Several points in my life, plenty. But there was a particular time that I'm remembering now that I was despondent, depressed. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to speak to anyone, because it felt like speaking to someone's not going to change anything. This is the situation. And number one, I didn't think anyone would understand. But number two, I thought, well, what are they going to do about it? There's nothing anyone can do. So I'd kind of gone quite reclusive. And my sister called me and said, hey, we're going up in a microlight. Come and join us. It'll do you good. You'll feel different. It'll be fun. And I honestly, from that state, I thought, what's that going to do? I'm still going to feel like this. The situation's still going to be the same. There's no point in doing anything like that. So I said no. But my sister, being my sister, the way she is, she pushed. And she's, come on, Odile, just come. If you hate it, we'll bring you back home, but just try. So she pushed and pushed. And eventually I went, fine. I know that it's not going to work, but I'll do it anyway. Well, I went, and in the first place, just being with people who were cheerful started to help a little bit. And then when we started going to the getting up, and of course the microlight flight was amazing. It was awe-inspiring in so many ways. And what it did was it brought the stress chemicals down in my system, started to produce feel-good chemicals, which brought blood back to the prefrontal cortex of my brain. And then I could think clearly again. So by the time I got back home, I had a whole new perspective on the situation that I was dealing with that I could not see from before. From where I was before, I couldn't see it that way. And that can lead to problem solving, strategizing, and that, as you were saying.
Yeah. So kind of backing up just a second and looking at that entire process, we have the negative thoughts. A negative thought pops up and we're aware of the negative thought. And then in that moment, we're also experiencing the negative neurochemicals that are associated with that. It's those negative neurochemicals that make that all feel so real. So a thought is just literally just a connection of neurons in a neural pathway, but it's that release of those neurochemicals that makes it feel real. And then it's like we've become entranced.
Yes.
And then what I see in my mind is I used to just hop on the little hamster wheel, and one negative thought led to another negative thought, which just kept that flow of negative neurochemicals going. So understanding, first of all, how that process is working in the background. I know that in a lot of other methods, they talk about go do something. And obviously in that instance for you, hopping in a little microlight and flying, that changed, those negative neurochemicals pretty significantly. But I think the point of what we're wanting to kind of get at today is, apart from hopping in a microlight every time you have a negative thought, what is something that we can actually be doing with negative thoughts in the moment, right?
Absolutely. And, that idea of doing something to change your brain chemistry is something we teach. As you pointed out, it's not what we want to share with you today. What I discovered since then is that a really important piece of this, and this is the bit that I've not heard anyone else talk about. I've not heard any of the other teachers or gurus or coaches or mentors talk about this piece. And I think this piece is crucial. And that is answering, acknowledging and answering with logic. And the reason I think that's so important is because, if you think about the two main parts of the brain that we're thinking of in this way, is the conscious mind, which is our awareness and, the conscious thoughts we have, and then the unconscious part of the brain, so the whole rest of the brain. And the fact that the conscious mind uses logic to try and make sense of experiences. We try and make sense of things. We try and problem solve. We're looking for ways to improve or to change things. So we're thinking logically with the conscious mind. The rest of the brain cannot think that way. So the unconscious part of the brain cannot use logic or reason, can't tell the difference between reality and imagination, and can't judge something as unrealistic. So what happens is, as that part of our brain goes offline, which is where we do our conscious cognitive thinking, the unconscious part of the brain takes over. And that's why even fears and worries that are unrealistic or illogical seem so real and so valid. So one of the first reason I feel it's important to answer with logic is to help separate the logic and the conscious mind from this unconscious part that can't do that. And an example of that would be, one of my things was, I don't know what to do. Like I said, I don't know what to do. And is business never worked for me. No, I did exactly the same as everybody else, but it didn't work for me. So I would find myself thinking, it won't work. There's something wrong with me. There's nothing ever works for me. Now, I would run away with that and add to it and everything. So instead, I started saying things like, well, is that true? And hasn't it worked for me in the past? And the main point of this is, if someone you cared about, a friend, said these negative thoughts to you, what would you answer? That's, I think, the bottom line of it. So would you join in? In other words, if they went, nothing ever works for me, would you say, yeah, I know? Or would you encourage them? Would you reassure them? Would you find a way to help them to feel better? We tend to do that for people we care about. We tend to not do it for ourselves.
So let's kind of deconstruct that a little bit. So kind of talk me through a process. I'm having a negative thought right now. Tell me how to deal with that in real time right now.
Okay, great. What's the negative thought? Because in order to know how to answer it, we need to know what it is.
Let me see if I can grab one.
Because you don't have them anymore. You can't find them.
Yeah, no, that's not true. A negative thought, whatever, current project, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Very good. So my answer to that would be, if I said to you, I've got something going on and it's not going to work, what would you say to me?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Would you go, yeah, no, you're wasting your time. You shouldn't.
Okay, so
bother.
Obviously with a practice like this, the sooner that you're able to catch this, and there's a little bit of practice involved here, that you want to be able to notice those negative thoughts coming in. It's recognizing that negative thought is popped up, but we want to have a strategy in place for negative thought.
Right.
Kind of like what you were saying, that you had to put a strategy in place for the thought of, I don't know what to do.
Yes.
And you had an immediate comeback with that.
Well, and that was a slightly different thing. So for that was breaking a habit. So I was in the habit of automatically saying, and I would say it out loud to myself when I was all by myself, I would say out loud, I don't know what to do. And what I did there was I started correcting myself in the moment. So it's like, if you got a habit of biting your nails, catching yourself and stopping biting your nails. And I would go, if I caught myself saying, I don't know what to do, I would immediately go, I do know what to do. I always know what to do, even though I didn't know what to do. That was a way of just breaking that habit. So like, you part your hair in one direction and then you've got to comb it in the other direction over and over for it to stay in that direction. So that was that piece. However, answering yourself, I think the best thing is to ask yourself, would I say this to someone I love? How would I answer this if someone I love said this to me? And you can think of someone specific, if there's a friend you have, or a family member, a child. If a child said to you, I'm stupid, or this never works for me, or everything's going wrong, what would you answer that child? And I know another analogy we used was, child is scared of monsters under the bed. You don't want to get on the bed with them and go, oh, I know it's terrible, and join them in being frightened, right? You also don't want to ignore them. The idea of ignoring those negative thoughts, or pushing them away, or just replacing them with positive thinking, that's what a lot of people teach. The problem with that is you're not answering, which means that thought, or the basis for it, is still back there, and it's not you're not answering the conscious mind.
Yeah. And I think that for me, the way that I started to work through that and to actually start answering in the moment, acknowledging that thought that's there. So I would begin to have that recognition of the negative thought. So for me, it was starting to catch that the negative thought and the negative neurochemicals at the same time are popping up. So I've got that fear, or I've got that doubt, or whatever kicking in. And it's like, wait a minute. Negative thought, the words that work for me were, is that really true? Mm-hmm. Is this really true? So imagining in my mind that I could sit down with a cup of coffee mm-hmm. and the thought, and just take a step back. It's like, is that really true? So I think being in that questioning space momentarily starts to make that break.
Yeah. And I must just clarify that I have heard people teach. So I didn't want to lump that in with the other, because I have heard other people teaching, is it true? Mm-hmm. Is it something else? And is it something else? If somebody else can remember that, there's three things. Is it true? Is it nice or empowering or something? Anyway, so I just wanted to clarify that. And that's very useful to begin with.
Yeah. I think for me, it was a way to break the trance, or break that habit of hopping on the hamster wheel and just allowing the negative thoughts to continue to spin out of control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the piece I want to add to that, because just that on its own is a really good start. But the mm-hmm. piece that I really want to make sure that we kind of share today mm-hmm. is treating it as if you have someone else in the room with you who said that to you. Who said that negative thought to you. Would you ignore them? Would you reassure them? How would you reassure them? You wouldn't join in. So I think that's really the key. And then, of course, the piece that we haven't talked about yet is where those thoughts are coming from in the first place. So you want to also address the original cause of those thoughts, which is unconscious references. And we have a free webinar in which we go into that, because that's a very big topic.
Yeah, that's a lot more detailed. But I think it's also important or empowering to know that the negative thoughts that feel like they're automatically just continuing to bubble up to the surface, and that we don't have any control, or we don't have any sense of knowing where they're coming from.
Yes.
It's really empowering to know that we can change that. Yes. We can go back and deal with that. And that's really what the webinar is designed to really kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Take a deep dive, yes. It'll let you know exactly what in your brain is the cause of those negative thoughts in the first place, and what you need to do to change them. So, it can be changed. Oh, I just wanted to use the analogy that answering those thoughts in the moment, as if you're answering someone you care about who said this, who's expressed that same thought or feeling, that's like steering your car. So the negative thought is like this: the car is starting to go off the road. Now you're going to grab the wheel and you're going to steer the car back to the road. That's answering the thought and then reassuring yourself the way you would a friend. The GPS is the GPS in the brain. So that's the original reason that the car is going off the road, because the GPS is set for some other destination. Steering is a start. You want to get back onto that road, but then you also need to change the GPS coordinates to match the desired destination, because then your car won't keep veering off the road. It will be automatically taking you to that destination you want to be in. And the equivalent of that is changing the brain's GPS, the GPS in the unconscious part of the brain that has been producing or triggering those negative thoughts and feelings all along. Once you change that, then you automatically are thinking differently. Those thoughts won't be the same. That's what that free webinar, that'll take a deep dive into that. And the link is in the description.
So just by way of summary, what's that one thing that we can do today when we're noticing those negative thoughts popping up?
Here's what you can do. Be alert and aware so that you are questioning thoughts and they're not just running on automatic, and then answer it the way you would someone you love. So imagine, what if my friend said this to me? And you can think of a particular friend. What if so-and-so said this to me? What would I answer them? And you may find, depending on how strong those negative emotions are, you may find the answer to that is, I don't know what I'd say to them. And if that's the case, that's okay. Keep going. Keep thinking, okay, but if they said, I would have to think of something to say. And what you're doing by that is, as you keep trying to use logic, you're helping to bring the blood back to the strategic thinking part of your brain. And then you will come up with something. Will that do for the one thing that I would suggest you do today?
Absolutely.
And register for the webinar so you can get the actual permanent solution. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond Limits, Empowering Coaches and Entrepreneurs.
We hope you found this episode enlightening, inspiring, and helpful.
And if you did, please do consider leaving us a 5-star review so that others can benefit as well.
Subscribe for more inspiration and strategies to fuel your success.
For more information on working with us, visit our website,
theremmertmethod.com. That's Remmert, REMMERT, theremmertmethod.com.
Sending you love and encouragement. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond Limits, Empowering Coaches and Entrepreneurs.
We hope you found this episode enlightening, inspiring, and helpful.
And if you did, please do consider leaving us a 5-star review so that others can benefit as well.
Subscribe for more inspiration and strategies to fuel your success.
For more information on working with us, visit our website,
theremmertmethod.com. That's Remmert, REMMERT, theremmertmethod.com.
Sending you love and encouragement. Until next time.